Hi guys! Do you ever feel like you're drowning in clutter? Like your spaces are cluttered and your mind is cluttered? When you feel overwhelmed by clutter, it could feel like there's so much to do and it could feel like a lot of pressure. You might find yourself reprimanding yourself for the situation and not knowing where to start. You might feel tired at the thought of all that you have to do, and you might feel unsure of if you need a game plan. And you might wonder how you're going to get decluttered to where your space feels nourishing and great again. I've encountered this situation time and time again, and when there's a lot, or when we feel a sense of overwhelm, something that's in fact manageable can feel like it's not manageable. It can feel like it's out of control when it's not, and you can feel out of control when you're not. But not to worry, because this is a temporary conundrum that you can overcome. And one thing that will help a lot is to put this into perspective and to get ourselves mentally into a more empowered position. There's also timeless advice that's been given throughout the ages that we'll talk about that you can implement to overcome your clutter and then get your space to where it no longer feels overwhelming. By the way, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, my name is Mika and I'm a writer, and I also own a small professional home organizing business. Over the years, I've worked with clients in hundreds of homes and I've seen amazing transformations, not just in the feeling of homes, but in the lives of clients. And I'm currently writing a book series about how to have good vibes in your home, and I'm working on the Decluttering guidebook. As I write, I share some of what I've written for the week on this channel. And this week I wrote about clutter and overwhelm and how to overcome it. So let's get more into it. First, let's talk about shifting our perspective. So your stuff is stationary, without a brain, inanimate object. You, on the other hand, have a brain. And our brains are more powerful and more amazing than any supercomputer. Once we put our minds to something, or we have a problem to solve, we can be very clever on how we solve them. Our minds are problem-solving machines if we put them in the perspective to be. And our brains are so powerful and omnipotent and complicated and has its own systems in place that scientists and researchers are still trying to understand this complex, amazing gray matter that's in between our ears. While we have one, let's trust it and take advantage of it and seek its help to offer solutions. Another way of saying this is to trust ourselves and our capabilities. Another thing to consider is that this feeling of overwhelm can be viewed as negative, but it could also be viewed as positive. So our brains have built-in biases that are made to protect us, and also emotions and feelings that are indicators. So these feelings of overwhelm are there to alert us that something is off in our environment. Think of it as like a warning system that something is wrong. If there's a feeling of overwhelm, then something might have become very off in our environment, and it's indicating that it's time to take action. If we didn't feel overwhelmed, we might just let it slide and put it off to later. Our internal alarm bells, if they're not sounding, it's not strong enough to captivate our attention. And when it gets to the point that your environment is overwhelming, it becomes time to do something about it. And it's your choice to get determined and to take action and take control back over your environment to where it's like a nourishing support system for you. And you can do it, and you have every capability. Just by having something as powerful as a brain on your side, you have every capability. This becomes about perspective now. And instead of interpreting the signals that you're thinking and feeling as exhausting and tiring and a demotivating factor, flip the script and then use it to your own advantage. Your brain, your emotions, your mind and body are telling you with overwhelm that something's off, and you're now led to fix it to make it better. In fact, when you end up with an environment that's overwhelming, some people get really determined and they not only make it better, but they end up sometimes making it really amazing. It's like they get on a roll and they keep going because they have this momentum and a goal in mind. That goal is like a shifting goalpost where they initially just want to clear the overwhelm, then they want to make it a nourishing space, then they want to optimize it, And the amount of times that I've seen a cluttered and overwhelming home go from cluttered and overwhelming to amazing and comfortable and beautiful is really inspiring. So first, let's shift our perspective to one of empowerment. These are possessions that we're up against, and we have the power over stuff as soon as we decide to reclaim our power over stuff. So you have every ability to make good decisions, to clear the items, and one by one, you will make a grand difference. So our homes are there to support us and to store our items and to give us enough living space to experience life comfortably and should be functional for us. Our homes should be our support systems, not a harbinger of impeding stress and obstacles. And we have every capability of bringing our homes to be nourishing and authentic to us and to support us in living our best lives. We are more powerful and more decisive than our stuff, and empowerment and confidence, it's an important perspective to take on. Sometimes we just need to believe in ourselves, and I think sometimes we can lose sight of that, but we can absolutely get it back again. Sometimes we can tell ourselves that we're naturally messy, or that we're chronically disorganized, or that we're prone to be clutter bugs, and all kinds of other fallacies and myths. But it comes down to habits, and it comes down to what we bring in, and comes down to how much stuff we have in relation to how big or small our space is, and all that can be shaped and honed. You have the power to make your home however you want it to be, and there aren't usually immediate grand changes, but through small changes you can eventually reach those grand changes, and oftentimes it adds up before we're aware of the difference. If you put in a little bit of effort, the changes compound, and before you know it, it's like this huge difference of feeling in your space. Another thing to talk about is visualization. Optionally, you can envision what you want your space to look and feel like. You can imagine how you want to feel while you're in your space, how it feels in the morning, how it feels at night. What activities do you want to easily take place in your space? And simply taking a few seconds or even a full minute or two to close your eyes and daydream, that feeling that you feel is completely within your grasp, no matter how big of a decluttering project that you're facing. Feelings are powerful, so feel how you would like to feel in your space. And anytime that you lose motivation or start to feel overwhelmed, you can close your eyes and go back to that place and that feeling and that goal. Knowing that you're capable of getting your space to how you want it is usually enough to really keep you going. It serves as an additional motivator. So right now you might be working in a very cluttered space, and it might give you a feeling of overwhelm. And you might have to work with that right now, but that's okay, because you have to start somewhere. And also you might want to remember that this feeling, you might want to remember what this feeling of overwhelm feels like for the future, because you can use it in the future to remember why you don't ever want to live in a excessively cluttered space again. And it serves just as a motivator to keep the feeling in your living space optimal and then clear of very much clutter. Another thing to think about is impediments to action, which are decision paralysis and overthinking. Whenever we're surrounded by clutter or a big decluttering project, the solution is to clear it and make decisions one by one. But sometimes we can get stuck. We can get stuck in decision paralysis mode, or be hard on ourselves, or get into a sense of overwhelm where we sit and think, and then we don't take action. But we feel exhausted and drained and feel like we've just spent the entire day taking action. So thinking is great, but there's a line between thinking and overthinking. And overthinking and getting stuck is the worst, because we don't get much done, but we still end up wasting both time and energy, and we don't clear any clutter. We just let it sit there. So when that happens, we don't feel good about ourselves. Next thing you know, a month has passed, or another month has passed, or another year, and it's still cluttered. So this has a long-term impact on our lives and our mental and emotional and physical health. because there's a mind-body connection, among other things. And there's just so many costs. So also clutter begets more clutter, so you'll find that more clutter will miraculously find its way into a cluttered space. So when I'm working one-on-one with a client in their home, what they usually need is for someone to believe in them, and they end up making all the decisions, and I mostly empower and guide them. So it takes away some of the overwhelm, and I help to pace the decluttering portion so it doesn't get overwhelming. So the thing that I do is I keep going, like I keep our process going, our momentum, and the client just has to focus on the item at hand. As we go through each item one by one, you can do that for yourself at home. And if it gets daunting, just repeat the mantra one by one. With your decision to focus on each item one at a time, you'll make decision after decision, and before you know it, you'll have gone through so many things. It's difficult to make a multitude of decisions at once, and you also make better decisions if you focus on one thing at a time. So go one by one. And even if you look at everything in the space, everything that surrounds you, like it can get overwhelming, but if you go one by one and just focus on what's in front of you, make decision after decision, it's going to just go by much more smoothly. And that's the best thing that you can do when you're facing overwhelm, is just focus on the item at hand one by one, instead of looking at everything that's around you and everything that you have to tackle. So here's how to clear clutter when you're overwhelmed. Whenever there's a situation for overwhelm, or there's an overwhelming project ahead of you, there are two great pieces of advice: to just start, and to break the project down into smaller, more manageable tasks that you can tackle. So let's talk about these two simple, timeless, brilliant pieces of advice in relation to clutter, because they both work and I've seen them work time and time again. So the first piece of advice is to just start. Just start might sound a bit flippant, but it's amazing, timeless, brilliant advice. So here's the thing that we should keep in mind, is that sometimes we wait for inspiration, but sometimes inspiration comes to us after we start. As we're working, as we gain momentum, we get inspired to do more. This has a bit to do with self-discipline too, but it starts with the simple action of just starting. So this isn't about clutter, but this is an analogy, and I'm just going to give you an example. But last night I was a bit tired, and I can work on this book that I'm working on, the book series, the Decluttering Guidebook, or I can watch a movie or read a book and relax. And I went for a walk and I was considering both options. Then when I walked back into my home, how my night would go would depend on my initial choice. Would I walk back into the right, into my bedroom, where I would wash my face and brush my teeth, get in my pajamas, and probably lay there feeling a touch guilty for not working on the book when I know I can use the time to get a lot done? I'd probably watch some videos on YouTube or watch a movie or read a book. Or when I walked into my home from the walk, I could walk to the left, and that's my home office, this office. So I could light a candle, get a cup of tea, and then get to work. And there have been so many days that I've been working on this book that I fly to my desk with glee, and I'm just ready to work on the next chapter or add to something that I've already written. But last night, I think the feeling of having still a lot of topics that I want to write about, and then a lot to clean up on my rough draft, it was just a little bit daunting, a little bit overwhelming. And when things are daunting or overwhelming, we could easily decide to put them off. But last night I ended up walking to the left and then into this office, and I also gave myself this incentive where I logged into this virtual writers group. And it was actually really cool in the end, because I did feel like I got some work done, and then it was midnight and there was a group of 11 writers logged on, and you can see them typing away, but it's all muted. You can just see each other on the screen. And after I started writing, it took about 10 minutes to gain my momentum, and then I ended up writing for 2 hours. And it really just came down to this choice to just start. Like, I didn't overthink it, and I didn't let the overwhelm get to me, which I could have easily succumbed to. But the point is, just start works wonders. That's just an analogy, but I ended up getting really into it, making some headway, and at some point while I was working, the inspiration came. And I see the same thing happen a lot when we're working on clutter. What is initially reluctance becomes momentum and inspiration. There have been so many times when I arrive and it goes to the client saying, "Oof, okay, let's do this, I guess," to, "Wow, the time went by really fast. We're on a roll, could we do some more?" And then we end up working a few more hours. That's happened more times than I can even remember. But another note is, sometimes when I've worked in extremely cluttered homes, it's very difficult to formulate a game plan. Some homes that I've worked in, there's just so much clutter that there's barely pathways, or we can't even see the dining room table, much less realize that there's a dining room table there. The homes that I work in, they're all across the spectrum from minimal to hoarding homes and, just everything in between. But I think that the more clutter there is and the more overwhelm there is, we pick an area and we just need to start. When we start, momentum kicks in. Whether it's writing a book or delving into one of the boxes or baskets or bags of stuff of potential clutter, if we waited for inspiration, we might be waiting around for a long time. But the interesting thing is, once we start taking action and making headway, even if it's just 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 items we decide yes or no on, instead of no progress, we're making some progress that we need to make in order to make a difference in the space. And after we're done, even if it's just a little bit of headway, we feel so much better about ourselves. And this propels us. I mean, you see those great quotes from the Stoics, these great emperors and philosophers whose work has withstood the test of time. Everyone experiences overwhelm, and it's just so human. And what did they do? They did what they had to do. And the timeless advice that is the antithesis to overthinking, in many instances that works wonders, is just start. There's a quote by Rumi, and it's one of my favorite quotes, that says, "As you start to walk on the way appears." And when we're decluttering, sometimes the most impromptu starts are so incredibly effective, especially when there's an overwhelming amount of clutter. It can be really easy to overthink and get paralyzed with overwhelm. But just take a small box or bag or drawer and take the things and start making decisions, and it can be amazing what you end up accomplishing. Also, with just start, there's one particular decluttering job that was really memorable, but a woman had called me and she had asked me to help her clear out her garage so that she can park her car in there. When I arrived, she showed me the garage, and when she lifted the garage door, it was quite literally packed to the brim, like Tetris. And we worked for 3 full days, and we went through each item one by one, and we talked through the things and then organized in the end. In 3 days, we had the garage cleared to the point where she can fit her car in there, and we put her remaining possessions on some shelves and then also the rafter. All the stuff that she really wanted to keep, and we made it really accessible. But she didn't need to buy any additional storage bins. She didn't need anything except for, we talked quite a bit about mindset beforehand and throughout the first part of the decluttering process. And then it just took 3 straight days of work and decisions. And when we first opened the garage, it looked daunting. And we went through each item methodically, one by one, and we gained momentum that propelled us forward. And she found items that were meaningful to her, that were actually best meant to be inside in like a climate controlled area, and things that she can tell me stories about. And we came across so many things that weren't providing value to her, but that were taking up space. So one by one, she made her decisions, letting go of things that didn't provide value to her, donating a lot of it, and selling some of the items that were worth her time and energy to sell. It might not always get done in 2 or 3 days like that, but sometimes once you get going, it can get done much faster than you think, especially faster than you think while it feels daunting. Even if it takes months, that's okay. Just know that you can do it. And I've tackled so many storage units and homes and garages and home offices with so many people. And many times it starts off where they're so overwhelmed at the beginning, and understandably so, because we have an emotional attachment to our items, and it's just a part of being human. Humans, we're thinkers, and we're also territorial. So no matter how big the job, with effort and determination, just remember you got this. As you take action, you make progress, no matter how small of action, compounded. And that's what makes a big difference, and that's what's really important. So one by one, and just start. So the next piece of advice is to break a big project down into smaller, more manageable tasks. So if you look at the entire space, it's going to feel overwhelming. So I recommend choosing a small area if you're overwhelmed, something that's an easy win, or something that's really weighing on you. And as you take action, it's going to give you momentum to propel you forward. So a drawer, a shelf, the floor of the kitchen if there's clutter on the floor, the nightstand next to a bed, you will intuitively know what's weighing on you. So even now, can you think of a specific space that would be a win? If you have an hour, do a drawer. If you have an entire day, do the kitchen. So if you feel overwhelmed, choose a spot that's weighing on you and start. Set aside time, whether it be 1 hour or 1 day, but focus only on the area and go item by item. And ask yourself if that item provides value to you. Get curious about how it really honestly does add value to your life. Remember that space for energy to flow will feel so good. And each item, is it worth the space that it's taking up? So one by one, and you'll gain momentum. And then when you finish, you put the remaining items back, and then you might have completed an area or at least made headway. But either way, it's gonna feel so good. I think that the kitchen and the bathroom are 2 overlooked areas where we spend time. Many clients that I've worked with have said that the bathroom is the easiest for them, but I recently worked with someone who said that beauty products were the hardest for her. Despite her overwhelm that she felt with the bathroom, she knew she wanted to tackle that area and get it sorted. So we got started, we pulled everything out, we sorted like with like, disposed of expired items, and we identified her favorites to keep and display prominently in the areas of prime real estate. And she was exhausted afterwards, but she was thrilled. And it was the decision making that she had put off there because she was overwhelmed. But once we gained momentum, we got it done pretty quickly. And sometimes all it takes is deciding to just start without overthinking, choosing an area and getting into it. As Rumi said, when we start to walk on the way will appear. Our brain, so smart, will lead us to the next step and the next step and the next step. So clutter isn't going to dissipate without you going through it, and it's emotional work, and it takes time and effort and energy, but you can totally do this. And on an ongoing basis, especially when you're working on a big decluttering project and combating that feeling of overwhelm, it might help to keep in mind that when we feel overwhelmed, there is a lot of action that we're not taking, and that can feel overwhelming. So once we start to take more active action, instead of having just a bunch of passive, undone things around us, that action starts to clear the overwhelm in a sense. And basically, so now you're starting to take action, you feel like you have more control, and then when overwhelm alleviates, then you can get even more productive and can make a big difference just taking action. And I hope that you enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you did, could you please hit the like button, as it helps more people to find my channel, and I'd really appreciate it. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.